Business now. We're starting in Argentina, in fact. A crisis in the nation's currency value has pushed it back into the arms of the International Monetary Fund. Joining me here on set, Brian Quinn is with us with that and the rest of the business news.
That's right. The country's finance minister will be meeting the head of the IMF on Thursday to ask for new loans in a bid to bolster Argentina's faltering peso. There's been criticism from both the streets and from opposition in parliament after President Macri announced on Tuesday that he would seek help from the IMF 17 years after the country defaulted on its debt and 12 years after it cut ties with the organization. Well, protesters gathered outside Congress in Buenos Aires to denounce what they fear could lead to a return to neoliberal austerity policies.
This is not going to solve our problems, this money coming from abroad. Instead, it will create a ball of debt that will be impossible to pay off, and what we've seen in the past will happen again. That's why it's very important that people get organized and come out against this. We don't have to let them do the same thing to us again when we already know it's going to fail and leave workers in poverty.
Well, next, as the U.S. brings back sanctions on Iran, companies who have been doing business there since the 2015 nuclear deal are planning their next moves. European firms like Total, Airbus, and Volkswagen are particularly exposed, as keeping deals they've signed with Tehran would make them target of harsh penalties in the U.S. Some are hoping for a long-shot move by the EU to block the effects of sanctions. Erin Ogunkaye reports.
The threat of escalating trade disputes between the European Union and the United States looms after Donald Trump's decision to back out of the Iran nuclear deal. European countries will have to close out their investments and end existing contracts in Iran within the next 3 to 6 months, and they stand to lose billions of dollars. Trade between the EU and Iran grew from $9.2 billion in 2015 to $16.4 billion in 2016. After the Iran nuclear deal was signed, in 2017 it reached $25 billion. But EU countries may have a secret weapon for the impending sanctions battle: blocking statutes. The retaliatory measure prohibits European businesses from complying with U.S. sanctions and allows the firms to disregard any court rulings that enforce American penalties. Though the tool has never been used, the threat of their use alone forced the U.S. to back down on penalizing foreign companies working with Iran, Cuba, and Libya in 1996. But some experts say the blocking statutes of the 90s may be too outdated to enforce now.
We have to find financial and legal tools to protect our businesses from the American sanctions. Nowadays, it's true that we don't have them yet. We have tools that date back to 1996, what we call an EU blocking regulation reglement, but they're not powerful enough to protect our businesses.
EU officials are already working on revamping the blocking statutes in consideration of President Donald Trump's decision. They will decide whether or not to move forward with the measures in mid-May.
Let's sign off for a check on the markets. Once again, oil prices on the rise as those Iran sanctions loom. WTI closing in on $72 a barrel, Brent nearing $78. European index is opening mixed as investors look ahead to an interest rate decision from the Bank of England today. We see London's FTSE 100 up around 0.2, Frankfurt DAX up 0.3. Paris's CAC 40 under the red line by around 0.1%. Asian indexes making gains Thursday as higher oil prices boost the energy sector, especially on Chinese markets. Well, those markets will be sure to be keeping a close eye on the simmering U.S.-China trade dispute, though. Beijing is sending a delegation to Washington soon, but says it will be taking a hard line against U.S. demands.
We oppose this action of unilateralism and protectionism. The United States must put away its threats. We will resolutely safeguard the interests of the country and people. China's position has not changed and will not change.
Well, finally, for business, smartphone addiction is a real thing, and tech companies are increasingly taking steps to address it. Google teased an upcoming version of its Android mobile OS update this week at a developer congress. New features include an app dashboard that will show you just how much time you're spending indulging your FOMO on Instagram, an app timer to limit that Facebook scrolling, and even a wind down feature that gradually eliminates not just blue light from your mobile screen, but color as well, turning your display into grayscale to encourage you to put it down.
First, they're tuning their technology so that it is personal and you use it how you want, when you want. But then at other times when you don't want to use it or when it's not maybe part of a natural interaction, then it won't be important and you can put it down safely.
You got to put the phone down, Stuart,
Yeah.
but you also got to watch out for reaching for the laptop.
Exactly.
That's my problem.
I want 3 of them. One for my eldest daughter, one for my middle daughter, and one for my youngest. You never know. They mate just to put the phone down.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Brian with Business. Oh, France 24.